In this episode of the Extended Forecast, I speak with Amy Freeze, a meteorologist with one of the coolest names in weather. Amy has climbed the ranks of the broadcast world over the last 2 decades, spending time in Philadelphia and Chicago, where she served as the market's first female chief meteorologist before landing a job at the #1 local news market in the country, New York City. Most recently, she was part of the launch team for the Fox Weather Corporation there, holding that role until late in 2024. Over the next half hour, we discuss Amy's last name being part of a Jeopardy clue on more than one occasion, her getting to throw out the first pitch at a Cubs and White Sox game during her time in Chicago, and Amy becoming one of the first females to receive the Certified Broadcast Meteorology seal. We also talk about an exciting project Amy is currently working on. It's a chat covering a wide range of weather topics. Join us for the informative conversation.
Thank you, Amy, so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I want to start off with the obvious, your last name that everybody always talks about, being Freeze and also being a meteorologist. For those curious out there, yes, that is actually your real last name. The question I have from that is, first of all, is winter your favorite season? And then second of all, were you kind of destined to be a meteorologist having a last name like that?
Great question. When I think about it, I did not grow up thinking, "Oh, it's obvious I should be a meteorologist." Now that I look back, I think, "Why did I not become a police officer?" Freeze. Get it? Or I could have been an ice cream developer. I could have made icy pops or something like that. But it actually was my name that steered me in the direction of the weather. I love winter. I love all kinds of seasons, but I really fell in love with the weather when I became a student of it. I was already in television. I was an entertainment reporter. I was 22 years old in Portland, Oregon, and I was interviewing celebrities in New York and LA, and I had a segment called All That Glitters. And the main meteorologist at the TV station at the time in Portland, Oregon, his name was David Apple. He had to go in for a heart surgery. And when he went in for the surgery, they said, "Who are we going to get to do the weather?" Amy Freeze walked into the studio. Her name sounds like weather. She should do the weather. And I became very unpopular quick because the news director said, "You should practice on the weekend night." So Friday night and Saturday night, after the news was over, everyone would stay about 10 minutes and let me run through things. So you can imagine how popular that made me.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, having to stick around longer than usual.
Exactly.
Now, one of the cool things about having a name like that is you've actually been a Jeopardy clue more than one occasion. What was it like to have your name used on Jeopardy, and how did you find out?
First of all, I do not have a relative that writes for Jeopardy or anything else. I have no idea how my name has come up, but it's really cool that it has. One time it was associated with Dallas rains, and then another time it was associated with a freezing point, 32 degrees. And both times I found out from viewers, people who were watching Jeopardy and said, "Oh my gosh, you were just a Jeopardy answer. It's crazy." So, that was fun. It was really fun to see that happen both times. And I feel like that is in the top echelon of claim to fame in my career is the Jeopardy question.
So do you feel like you'd be a good Jeopardy contestant?
Maybe. I don't know. I've always been a fan. I don't know. Gosh, those people are so smart. They are so
There's such a
incredibly.
variety too of categories. It's not just one or two things. It's like you have to know everything pretty much.
Yeah, I some categories I would do well in. History I would do really really well in. Common sense categories I would do well in, but some of those things, the literature is so difficult.
It's always funny too, like they know the most off the wall stuff, but not like the things that you and I might think are that everybody should know, like sports or something basic.
Right, exactly. Some of the questions that they miss, you're like, "Oh, of course, I knew that. I knew the answer to that one." But it's always such a fun show. It's something that everybody can watch, and few people know it is the longest running game show on television. So it's been around a long time.
And my family and I grew up watching Jeopardy. Of course, Jeopardy and Wheel kind of went hand in hand, but I love the show growing up. Don't think I'm quite smart enough to get on there, but it is fun to watch.
If they had a meteorologist category, you and I would be right there. We could
If every
definitely be
category was
contestants.
meteorology, we could be returning champions for sure.
That would be so fun.
So on the same category of TV, but a different subject, going back to you being a meteorologist, you climbed through the ranks to eventually become the first chief meteorologist, I believe, in Chicago. What did
Yes.
that mean to you to become that role, and what did you love about the Windy City?
You know, I'm from the Midwest. I grew up in southern Indiana, little town called Jeffersonville, right across from Louisville, Kentucky. And I lived in several major cities, and I was living in Philadelphia at the time. And they said, "We'd love for you to come and be a meteorologist for the night news." And everybody knows in Chicago, the king of late night weather is Tom Skilling. And I would be the first woman who would go up against him in the evening hours. And it was a little intimidating. But the thing that was the most enticing about the Chicago job is that we were the first television station to have dual polarity. So we worked with Barron to install our own radar there in Illinois and then had dual pole radar. So I took a lot of classes. I learned a lot about how the radar worked, how to use it. And that was pretty thrilling, the technology that came along with that job. We were very competitive with the severe weather with WGN, and it was a great time. Not only did I do the news late at night with the weather, but I also worked for the Chicago Bears during the season. So I would be on field during the Chicago Bears games and give clippets and forecasts and snippets up onto the jumbotron for all the fans. So I'd be like, live from the southwest corner of the field, bear down. And we became big Chicago Bears fans in the time we were there. I will say I'm a fair weather fan. I kind of go with what team I want to be a fan of at the time. I'm a huge Kansas City fan right now, Kansas City Chiefs. But it was a thrill to work in Chicago, mainly because I'm from the Midwest, the lakefront there, Lake Michigan, incredible weather. Amazing temperature changes and weather changes drastically there. Had a lot of severe weather in the time I was in Chicago. And I'll tell you something interesting about being a woman meteorologist in Chicago at that time. I did feel a little bit of pressure and a little bit of anxiety that I needed to do something to kind of um, be at the same level as the men who were in the late night forecast realm. So I wore suits, dark suits every night. Almost like a double blazer, like dark suits. I looked at some of the video I posted on YouTube recently and I looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh. But I just thought I want to be serious. I don't want to distract or anything. And so I'd wear these dark suits. And maybe about 2 years into the job, I was like, okay, I got to cut loose, and then I started wearing dresses, and it was over from there. But I do remember sort of that pressure. Like I really want to be taken seriously. I had my meteorology degree. I had started working on my master's degree by that time and stuff. So I wanted to be taken seriously, and I felt like dressing the part might help me a little bit.
Yeah, and talking about being taken seriously too, you were one of the first women to also get the Certified Broadcast Meteorology AMS seals. What was that like to be one of the first to get that too?
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. I mean, I have a lot of different opinions about the SEALs and the different organizations that we have. When I first entered the business, they still had your fellow colleagues or your other meteorologists judging whether you could get your seal. So yes, you had to pass the test, but they were also sort of a review board for you, which I really struggled with because at the time there were a lot of top meteorologists in what I should say, top meteorologist markets that had board members who were reviewing. And I was like, it seems kind of unfair that someone that you're in competition with for a job would be reviewing your application. So I kind of struggled back and forth with those things, but I still worked on it very hard. I took education super seriously. And that's important. And that's been a trend for women. If you look back, I did this write up on meteorology and women in the business. So in the 1940s and 50s, we had a lot of servicemen who were meteorologists at war. And so it became a trend, just as TV was beginning in the 1950s, to have women as the well, I should say the weather reporters, just delivering a little bit of weather. It was part entertainment and fun. When the men came back from the war, they were trying to kind of come back into the meteorology roles on television, and the women had become more dominant. So one of the ways that they sort of evened the score to make it essential that men got back in the role is they started the SEAL program. So they started the National Weather Association and AMS, American Meteorological Society SEAL programs. And it was very difficult for women to pass any of the tests because they hadn't had the education opportunities. So we really saw a resurgence, I would say, in the late 80s and early 90s of women getting completely educated, being able to compete with the SEALs and therefore be available for the top jobs. Whereas before, it had sort of been an ebb and flow through the business of when men and women were, in front of the TV cameras. It's really kind of a fascinating history how it all went down, but interesting nonetheless. And I'm glad that I did not I didn't rest on laurels of a nice smile and a good personality. I actually went out and got my education, and it's paid off.
Yeah, well, I'm sure. And being a history kind of nerd myself, I actually hadn't heard that before. So it is interesting to learn about that aspect too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. They really use the SEAL as a way to kind of get credentialed meteorologists back in the role of being on television, and so made it cool, right, for scientists to be in front of the camera. And women had to struggle a little bit to get back into that place, because not necessarily great history with science and math and so forth for many women. They'd struggled, or maybe not even struggled. Maybe it was just the appearance of the struggle that had held them back. And so once women got involved in STEM, and there's so many great examples of women meteorologists that I can think of, that I've gone through the business with the last couple of decades, and that are still in the business. I mean, one of my best friends, Stephanie Abrams, she's, I think, the longest running woman meteorologist on TV, if I'm correct.
Yeah, she certainly had a big time career at the Weather Channel.
Yes, and she's still working every day.
Yeah, good stuff. Now, going back briefly to Chicago, you also had the chance to throw out the first pitch at the White Sox and the Cubs games. How did that come about? And was it something that you always wanted to try to do?
I thought it would be an awesome opportunity to do it. Are you a baseball fan,
I
Matt?
am. I'm a Nationals fan, actually.
Okay, all right. You'd be good friends with Doug Kammerer there in DC, probably. But I was doing a weather education day, and I said, this would be a really cool way to present weather and physics to kids. And so we came up with how weather impacts the game of baseball. We put together a brochure and all that kind of stuff, and I had pitched it to the White Sox first and foremost. But at the same time, I was doing charity work for the March of Dimes. And they said, we have this honor where we are invited to throw out the first pitch. And because you've done so much work for us, March of Dimes is an organization that helps premature babies. And one of my daughter was born premature. And so they said, would you like to throw out the first pitch? And I said, yes. So I actually threw out the first pitch at Wrigley as part of a charity event first. But I had started this weather education day program for Major League Baseball and started with the Chicago White Sox doing that. So pretty awesome opportunities. There were two different avenues that ended up getting it on the mound and throwing the first pitch, but they were both awesome opportunities. And anybody who's been to Wrigley, down on the field, being by the Ivy, it's really once of a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go to Wrigley with the history, of course, baseball tied in with it too. Do they still do those weather education events there to this day?
I don't know. I don't know if they've kept them up.
Okay.
I've tried them in different places over the years. It's really a cool way to interact with kids in sports because it's not just baseball. Baseball is greatly impacted by weather. A lot of the Major League Baseball stadiums, everything from the way the winds enter the stadium to weather impacting the way people pitch, the type of bats they use. There's just so many things that interact with weather and baseball. And then you can look at other sports like hockey. Yeah, it's an indoor sport most of the time, but the friction on the ice, the temperature in the arenas, all kinds of different things are great weather lessons and great STEM lessons. Football, of course, is one that's great. People say, like, why would they want a meteorologist on the field during the Chicago Bears game? Well, one thing, we were showing off our radar, so there was some commercial aspect to that, but we also were forecasting for the fans who were there during incredible wind chills. I actually was there for the coldest Chicago Bears football game ever. It was incredible. It was a Chicago Bears versus the Green Bay Packers. It was a late December game, and the wind chill was insane. I think it was like 15 below or something. It was so
Wow.
cold. And then The other interesting part of it is that when you think about football, if you decide at the beginning of the game how you're going to flip the coin, that will decide which way you're going, right? If you're going to be on offense or defense. And so if the winds are going to change during the end of the game, a strategy could be understanding the field advantage with the winds. So that's something interesting that a lot of teams do think about and plan for. And then also the equipment. Football players wear these cleats that they practically cement onto their feet, but the cleats on the bottom are different sizes and different depths. And so depending on what's going to be happening with the field, if it's a turf, if it's going to be wet, if it's all different kinds, they make equipment decisions based on the weather as well. So I know they have heated benches, so it doesn't look so hard out there, but they do make some decisions based on the elements.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the things too that the average fan doesn't necessarily think about all that goes into it as well, not just the play calling, but also thinking about the weather and just every aspect that's involved.
Home field advantage.
Yes, indeed. So after your career in Chicago, you moved to, I think, New York next or Philadelphia next.
New York next.
Okay, so going to the biggest TV market local wise in the United States, was that always a goal of yours after getting into meteorology, or how did that aspire to be in the #1 market in the country?
Yeah, before I went to Chicago, there was a job opening at WABC. I almost took the job then, but I ended up going to Chicago. I was just really excited to get started, and I embraced the experience of New York City. I lived in Manhattan. I took the subways. I raised my 4 children for 8 years. I had my kids all in New York City. Eventually, after COVID, they started to go out west to school and do different things, but I had them all there in New York City for a long time. They went to public schools. And I really embraced being a part of the community and experiencing it. There were incredible weather events as well, right as I took the job. And so that ingrained me immediately. Superstorm Sandy was within a year of me taking the job there in New York. And it's the place that I've lived the longest as an adult. So the New York City television job really turned me into a New Yorker, for which I feel I'll have the fiber of that my entire life. I've started to kind of do half and half time in New York City and then where my kids are going to school. Utah. And so I've kind of gone back and forth. You can see here in the background, I built myself a green screen. I've been doing some projects, on the side that I really enjoy a lot, but I still am back in New York every other week. So I'm still doing a lot of things in the city and haven't quite folded up shop there yet.
So you feel like New York's always going to have a place in your heart you never entirely leave?
Yeah, I think so. And also just for business wise, being there's a lot of projects that you need to be in the city for, you need to be there for. And I feel really comfortable living in the city. Some people are like, I don't know so much. I come to Utah because I want to be close to my kids. I have 4 children, 3 boys and a girl. And so I want to be closer to them as they get into their sports and their college and their different careers and stuff like that they're doing. I want to be close to them. But at the same time, my job is still taking me to New York a lot.
And in New York, you were one of the first people part of the launching process of Fox Weather. How did that group form, and what did you learn from that experience?
Incredible experience. Fox Weather is a division of Fox Corporation. So if you think about it like Fox Business or Fox Sports or the other projects that Fox has, including Fox Entertainment. There's just a lot of divisions under Fox Corp. And so it made sense to them to start a weather division. And initially it was going to be just an app streaming on your phone and, have access to weather information immediately. And then the meteorologist would present video on demand or different forecasts available. But when we got the group together and they initially started to launch it, they're like, oh, wait, hold on. We've got enough people. We could kind of parse this out and maybe cover a good portion of the day. And I think we started out with like 12 hours during the day that we covered the forecast. And then at night we would have, I think it was called Weather After Dark. I can't remember the exact name of it, but we had a dark map that showed temperatures and the night lights. I think it was called Nightlight. That's what it's called, Nightlight. Okay. And so that's how we started covering 24/7. And I think the the administration was like, geez, I think we have a whole weather channel here. And so that's how we went from a weather app to a streaming 24-hour weather service. And really, I got to tell you, the experience at Fox Weather was awesome because we had not only incredible meteorologists there at the headquarters in New York that were on camera, but we had a whole set of meteorologists off camera who were also putting together the forecast, directing content, really the heartbeat of the operation, making sure everything was up to date and on point. And then we had the luxury of the entire Fox network across all the O&Os and the affiliates. So that was kind of a cool experience to be able to interact with so many meteorologists on so many different levels. And I was there for the first 3 years of the project, and man, I learned a lot. There were times, Matt, there were times when we were on air as meteorologists for 6 hours straight, not covering it every 10 minutes or coming in and out, but we were on hosting
Wow.
the shows for 6 hours at a time.
It's like being a surgeon in a hospital.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Continuous.
Yeah.
So your life isn't entirely weather. You have stuff outside of that too. You've climbed mountains, run marathons. Why is it important to you to have that aspect of your life too that's not involved with weather?
That's a great question. I came home for a vacation about 3 or 4 years ago, and I said to my parents, "Oh, I'm going to go climb Mount Timpanogos." My dad says, "What are you going to do that for?" My mom's like, "Don't go by yourself. What are you guys? What are you doing? What are you going to do?" And I said, "You know what? It's going to be hard, but I want to do it. I want to accomplish it, because if I do that, it makes everything else in life seem easy." So doing hard things like running marathons or climbing mountains or sort of challenging myself physically and mentally with different types of goals has made a lot of other things in life seem easy. And the fact of the matter is, you're a meteorologist on camera, but you also got to live your life. And life is not always easy. There are definitely some obstacles, some challenges, some hard times. And I just really feel like the goals that I have set and accomplished have made those hard times a lot easier. And that's just kind of how I've looked at it. Plus, it's fun, it's exciting, get to meet new people, go new places, and see new things. I've run 10 marathons, several of those in New York City. And then I've also done Chicago, Philadelphia, San Diego Rock and Roll Marathon, some of those over the years. And I love the mountain climbing. I really like that a lot. It's tough, but it's fun. I did three mountains, I believe, in the UK. My favorite was Snowdon Mountain, which is one of the high peaks there in the UK. And that was pretty cool. I will not be doing Mount Everest or anything like that, but I've enjoyed it. It's been cool.
Yeah, Mount Everest is one of those things that it sounds cool until you try to do it, and then you're like, maybe not.
Yeah, watch the movies, and that'll get you out of the mood.
Exactly. So lastly, I want to talk about what's next for you. You've won Emmys, you've been on national TV, the biggest market in America. What's your next big thing that you're trying to achieve?
Thanks for asking. I've been working really hard on a project that has to do with AI. I know artificial intelligence is kind of a buzzword. For some people, it's like, oh, I'm kind of a skeptic. Other people like, oh, that's exciting. I want to hear more. Honestly, I have embraced this concept of technology like never before. If we were having this conversation maybe a year ago, I would have said, you know what, humans never can be replaced, and I would not be very interested in learning much about it. I really would have put it off. In the last year, I've gone from not being able to do a Google Meet, laugh out loud, being able to now learn automation and understand the technology that's coming through. So in meteorology, AI is making inroads in a variety of ways. One is forecasting itself, right? We're able to get more data comparative to climate data, and it's outputting better forecasts. Now companies are taking this and saying, okay, how can we graphically display this? How can we use this for the consumer? That's an exciting thing, to get better information and to use that for forecasting. But there's a ton of other ways. It's easy to get discouraged thinking, oh, something's taking my job that's automated. But let me tell you, it's an exciting world out there. The artificial intelligence, the automation, somebody has to figure out how to make that work. And as meteorologists, you need to know the right questions to get those things to work. So It's frustrating, I think, for a lot of people to see change come on, but I have found it really refreshing and very exciting to embrace the change that is out there and incorporate it. And it's really opened a lot of doors. It doesn't mean that the job of a meteorologist is done when you start to bring in avatars and AI. Instead, it allows those components of technology to take over the simplistic tasks, which then free you up for data analysis, for interaction about climate issues, for so many other amazing conversations. So we know that people are getting their weather from their phones, right? They're picking up their phones, they're getting the numbers. So if we can give those numbers to them in quicker ways, in entertaining ways, and then we start to focus on bigger issues, I think that's exciting. So for me, I think that AI is my short-term project that I'll be working on. I'm going to go to NAB. I'll probably release some things during NAB. And from there, I may go back to work in a studio. I may go back to work in broadcast, but taking a little break here to see what's possible, sort of maybe form a little bit of my own company. You starting new in this business, you are seeing it in a different light than me 25, almost 30 years ago. When I entered television, we did this thing where I was doing weather, but we had to tape the scripts together and roll them along a lighted path of some sort in order for a teleprompter to work for the anchors, and then we would have to run and go do the weather afterwards. So it was a much different world, but the technology is happening and changing at such a pace now. It's exciting to be in this business. Don't think of it as a traditional path. It may not be the path that you entered thinking it might be, where you go to a small market and then you jump from place to place. Instead, think of it as this: it's Matt's world. Matthew has control of his weather world. And yes, you're working for a television station right now, but the way that you can deliver the forecast, the way that you can reach people, the way that you can interact with them, and the products you can create, it's an exciting world out there. So I really thought of TV as I'm working for someone, and that's how I've spent a lot of my career. Taking a break right now, trying to build a business that represents all the things I've learned. And it's kind of challenging, I'll tell you the truth. It's not as easy as you would think just to work for yourself, but it's also exciting. Like, I'm waking up every day learning new things, and finding it pretty incredible too. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens with it. But you're the first to hear it. AI is coming, attached to Amy Freeze, and hopefully I'll get it launched by the time we get into NAB in early April.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. And AI is one of those things too, where there's a lot of unknowns to it, but a lot of positives that can come out of it eventually. So hopefully it all works out well.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because we're in a business where trust is important, accuracy is important. All of those, words are really important to how the viewer receives information. And so you're right. You got to tiptoe and be very, very gentle with the technology as it comes in. But the possibilities are incredible. And if we can do things faster and better, it could save lives. And so really that is the end goal for most meteorologists.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of looking at it. All right. Thank you so much, Amy, for the time. I appreciate it. Hopefully everything goes smooth from here. Hope you have a good day.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate your time. Good luck.
Big thanks to meteorologist Amy Freeze for taking the time to talk to me. Don't forget to like this video, comment below, and subscribe for more future content just like this.